We have a great guest with us right now, one of my conservative heroes. This guy is as principled as any great conservative has ever been, whether it's Ronald Reagan, whether it's Barry Goldwater. It is Ted Cruz. It's right up at the top, United States Senator from the great state of Texas. He was on President Trump's top list of potential Supreme Court nominees. The moment I heard Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed, I mentioned in my own personal social media that I thought that Amy Coney Barrett or Ted Cruz would be the two best choices, and we've got him with us now, United States Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, you're on with Wayne Allyn. How are you?
Wayne, how you doing? I'm doing terrific.
I'm a big fan. It's great to have you on. Great honor. Your new book comes out tomorrow, One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. You wrote that book a long time ago not knowing what was about to happen. It was just pure chance that everything happened. That's hilarious.
Well, I did. I wrote it this spring and summer, and when we were in the midst of COVID lockdown and I was working from my living room, I sat down to write it, and the timing was to come out this fall right before the election and really underscore the stakes of the election on November 3rd and how important it is for all of us. But, of course, I didn't know that we would have the Ginsburg's vacancy and be right in the middle of a battle just as it's coming out. It comes out tomorrow morning.
All right. Well, listen, that's good luck, and good luck goes to those who are wonderful people, and you're a good guy, and I really think it'll be a big hit. So everybody go out there in the war army, the Wayne Allyn Army, and get a copy of Senator Ted Cruz's new book, One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Could Change History. And now tell us what's in that book and how it applies to Amy Coney Barrett.
Well, sure. I'm glad to. So before I was in the Senate, I was a Supreme Court litigator. What I did for a living is argue cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And so the book, each chapter of the book addresses a different constitutional right. And so there's a chapter on free speech. There's a chapter on religious liberty. There's a chapter on the Second Amendment. There's a chapter on U.S. sovereignty. There's a chapter on elections and democracy, and it discusses Bush versus Gore. I was part of the legal team that defended George W. Bush. And obviously we might well, in this election this year, go back to a contested election that could go all the way to the Supreme Court. And what I do in each of the chapters is tell war stories, tell the inside story of what was going on at the court. If you want to understand the Supreme Court, if you want to understand the justices and what they're doing, and each chapter addresses the big landmark cases, many of which were 5-4, and I played an active part in litigating quite a few of them. And so I tell the inside story of the big cases and how on the 5-4 cases, we are just one vote away from losing our liberties, from losing our free speech, losing our religious liberty, losing the Second Amendment protection. And so it really underscores the stakes of the election, but it also helps folks understand what's really going on and just how fragile our liberties are right now.
Tell me about what you know about Amy Coney Barrett. I think it was a good choice. I think she's a solid conservative. I did hear some critics over the weekend who said, Wayne, you think she's a great conservative, but she voted with the government on several important COVID issues, lockdowns, closures of the economy, and people are worried about that. Any thoughts from you on the positives and negatives, pluses and minuses of Amy Coney Barrett?
Well, sure. I think she's a very strong choice. You look at her background. She graduated number one in her class from Notre Dame Law School. She was a law clerk for the great Justice Antonin Scalia. She's been a law professor at Notre Dame for 20 years. She's one of the most respected federal court of appeals judges in the country. And somehow she manages to do all of that while also being a mom to 7 kids. I can't even imagine just doing the last piece, much less being one of the most respected federal judges in the country at the same time. And I think President Trump, in making this nomination, was really delivering on the promise he made to the American people to nominate principled constitutionalists to the court. And the Senate, we will confirm Judge Barrett, I believe, will do it by the end of the month before Election Day. And when the Senate does that, we'll be delivering on our promise to confirm principled constitutionalists to the court.
And you really do believe she's the right kind of Scalia conservative compared to, a guy who I've just come to really not like, John Roberts. On key issues, he abandons us, and I don't understand how that ever happened, why he's doing that. Any thoughts on your end, Senator Cruz, why that would happen?
Yeah, quite a few thoughts. And actually, in the book, One Vote Away, I addressed John Roberts at considerable detail, and also Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch. The entire final chapter of the book is on Supreme Court nominations and how presidents can get it right going forward. And it presents a history of Supreme Court nominations going all the way back to Dwight D. Eisenhower. And the pattern we see, the Democrats, they bat nearly 1,000. Virtually every Democrat on the court votes exactly as the Democrats would want in virtually every major case.
Correct.
Republicans, at best, are not bat 500, and usually worse than that.
Why?
There's a clear pattern. So if you look at the justices who honored their oath, who remained faithful to the Constitution, people like Antonin Scalia, people like Clarence Thomas, people like Sam Alito, people like my former boss on the court, Chief Justice William Rehnquist, every one of them had served in the executive branch, had been vocal and outspoken defending the Constitution, and had a proven record. And here's the most critical part about it. They had suffered the slings and arrows, the criticism, the withering heat of the press, and they hadn't faltered. That's
right.
The most consistent pattern. On the other hand, when you have a nominee who's never said a word, who's never been criticized, who stayed out of the limelight, but someone says, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, trust me, 100% of the time they turn out to be train wrecks. And so what I urge is to look for people with proven records. So I'll give you a couple of decision points where we got it wrong. If you look at when President Bush 41 was nominating a justice to the court, and he had in one room David Souter, and in another room Edith Jones, who was a judge on the Fifth Circuit, is one of the strongest conservatives in the country. And he picked Souter because Souter would be easier to confirm, and Souter became the leader of the left.
Yes, he did.
I would have picked Edith Jones. George W. Bush, when he was nominating the Chief Justice, he had in one room John Roberts, and he had another room, Mike Ludig, who was the strongest conservative in the country, like Edith Jones, but it would have been a fight to get him confirmed. And
right.
Bush 43 picked John Roberts, and John Roberts has turned into Sandra Day O'Connor.
Right.
And I'll tell you, President Trump, for both of the vacancies, the person I urged him to appoint was Senator Mike Lee. Because I think of all the people on the list, Mike has been in the trenches. He has been pounded over and over and over again. And I am certain that 40 years from now, if Mike Lee were a justice, that he would continue to be faithful to the Constitution, and he wouldn't give a flip what the New York Times or Washington Post says. I'm not as sure of some of the other choices.
Well, are you as sure of Amy Coney Barrett?
I think she's a good choice. The president said for the Ginsburg seat, he wanted to nominate a woman.
A woman, yeah.
I think she has, and so he limited the field that he was looking at. I think she is a stronger choice than Brett Kavanaugh was, for example. Brett Kavanaugh had a record very much like John Roberts, and I am quite concerned that 5 years from now, we'll see Kavanaugh headed in the direction of Roberts. I think Barrett has a stronger record than Kavanaugh.
That's why I thought of you right away. I immediately thought of Ted Cruz because I think of you in those exact terms, and I know you'd never change. You're my kind of guy. You're my guy. So I thought of you, but from what I've seen in the press, you just did not want. You like being a senator, did not want it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's a shame.
That's exactly
it's a shame because I like you and Mike Lee. I like Mike Lee too. Mike Lee's a little bit too libertarian for me, and I was the libertarian vice presidential nominee. But I'm really a lifelong Republican conservative. I'm a Reagan conservative, is what I am, and I just at the moment got involved with the Libertarian Party for a couple of years. Mike Lee is very Ron Paul libertarian like. I'd rather have a guy who's a rock ribbed conservative like you.
Well, for all three of the vacancies that have occurred under President Trump, I've had serious conversations with the president about them, and all three times I told him I did not want to do it. Now I don't want to overstate it. He didn't offer me the position, but we had serious conversations. And the reason I didn't want to do it is a principled judge stays out of political and policy fights. I don't want to stay out of fights. I want to lead the fight right now to get Judge Barrett confirmed. I think we need fighters in the political realm, and that's what I'm doing.
All right. Well, I'm glad we have you to lead the fight in the United States Senate. I think you are a great conservative. I'm a big fan of Barry Goldwater. You know, I campaigned for Barry Goldwater when I was 2 years old in my father's arms, literally. And I'm a big fan of Ted Cruz. I think you're a great man, and we really appreciate everything you do, Senator. Keep getting it. Keep going after it. Thank you, Senator Cruz.
And you know, I sit in Barry Goldwater's desk on the Senate floor, and just as we're finishing, everyone please go by One Vote Away. It's interesting, it's fun, it gives you the inside story, and hopefully you'll learn about all of the key issues at the court right now. One Vote Away on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get books.